Aman, thanks very much for joining us. For those who don't know, just tell us a little bit more about DeNoize and I suppose the strategy and the technology there.
Basically, it's denoising the world. We have a very strong vision where we want to make the world a little bit quieter, or at least quieter for people to live in, because we see the noise is a growing problem, which is impacting our health and quality of life at the same time. And it's increasing day by day. So we wanted to create a solution that can offer a bit relief against this urban noise problem. In terms of technology, denoise is sort of like a active noise cancelling headphones, but then for the whole building. So the fundamental principle is, you take outdoor noise and you take a counter noise that can cancel it so that you don't hear it inside. And we apply it for the whole building facade.
Is this designed for sort of all types of buildings? Is it for offices? I suppose, where are you seeing the predominant interest in it, Aman?
So we see in any sort of building, if it's not very old with thin walls, but most nowadays building do have good insulating walls, roof, floors, and it's mostly the facade, which is made of glass that leaks most of the noise inside. So as long as we are using glass in a building, the technology is applicable. It could be in the form of standard size windows for residential purposes, but could also be much bigger facades for commercial buildings. In terms of interest, I think it's more the fact that if the building is close to a noise source, so it doesn't have to be residential or commercial, but if it's close to a noise source, for example, airports or next to a busy road or train tracks, then the interest is much higher because you see and hear the noise right away from those sources.
When do you expect to have this working and in operation? And are there already projects that you're working on?
So we have already developed multiple proof of concepts where in our demos in the labs, the technology works. We are working very closely with the Amsterdam Schiphol airport in the Netherlands, where the problem is quite big since the airport is really closely located to residential areas. And we are aiming to do a real life implementation end of this year, gain more understanding, more feedback of how this can be applied in an actual situation. And then we are aiming to have the first version of the product by Q3, Q4 next year, that we can put it in the market.
I'm interested to drill down a little bit more in terms of the sustainability side. There's a lot of focus, obviously, on both wellness and ESG. In terms of this as a technical solution, I suppose, how do you see that helping both sides of the equation there?
Well, we can look at sustainability in two different facets. One is the sustainability in terms of energy, but then there's another aspect of sustainability, which is about well-being and people living environment. If we specifically talk about energy and materials, we see there's more and more trends to reduce the carbon footprint of all the things we do in any industry these days. Same thing we see in the glass industry. To meet the SDG goals of the coming years, there's a lot of interest to reduce the amount of glass that is used in the building. However, on the counter side, if it's located close to the noise source, the only solution we use now is to make multiple layers of glass or make the glass thicker to meet the regulations that you need to in order to get a build permit. So, there's these two counter sides where one has to use thicker glass. On the other side, we need to reduce the material. So there we see that we could improve the insulation without increasing the material usage, thereby reducing the carbon footprint of the whole glass industry in the built environment. When we talk about really the sustainability in terms of living environment and well-being, there it's even a better fit because we see noise impacting more and more people, and it's reflected over a long period of time when it starts affecting your health because you're not sleeping very well, or you're a little bit annoyed and stressed in your own home, making buildings less livable if the noise is not controlled. And there we are focusing to optimize the living environment, the sound environment, by canceling certain sounds, but also enhancing certain sounds like birds in the morning or rainfall when it starts raining. to make that quality of living environment much higher, and thereby increasing the sustainability of urban environment, basically.
And Aman, are you seeing a difference in terms of the developers at the moment who are particularly interested in this kind of technology?
Yes. So for what we have experienced over the last 3 years is that there are certain developers who wants to build a project rather quickly and put it out there in the market. And there the motivation is to minimize cost, minimize the build time, and just meet the requirements you need for a building permit. However, there's also a completely different section of developers, which are more often than not are also asset managers who look at the future value of their asset and how they can build something now where people would choose to live for next 20, 30 years, which means they have to make those buildings resilient to changing environments for over a 20 years time. And there's kind of a switch in the mindset of those developers or asset managers, because they focus a lot on what would their occupants want. How can we make it as comfortable and healthy for their occupants so they choose to stay? And there we see a lot more use of technology to optimize the living environment, both in terms of automated temperature monitoring systems, humidity control, oxygen levels, even the light. And we see the only piece in this puzzle that's missing is the control over your sound. With those developers, we are working very closely to see how we can also offer this control. Then you have a perfect living environment, hopefully.
That resilience side, I think, is going to be really important for the investors and asset managers going forward. Really interesting to get some insights on DeNoize, Aman. Thanks very much for joining us.
You're very welcome.